Hi everyone, welcome back. Welcome back. This should be a really interesting video, very engaging video, because I am actually going to integrate a variety of different topics that I've addressed here on my YouTube channel, my Facebook page, relating to cuckolding, interracial relationships, BDSM, Black New World Order, which I think is a complete joke. And I'm going to talk about those things in the context of effectively channeling sexual energy. So, before we get into this video, let's just take a few moments and center ourselves. Actually, you know what? I'm going to open my packages. I'm going to open my packages and give you guys a chance to gather here into this video. I got these packages this weekend, actually. So I ordered some new t-shirts here. And I've kind of fallen in love with this company. Oh, I'm already blushing. Oh, this is too cute. Check this out. Basquiat. And I know you guys be like, just get into the video, Listen, we're gonna get into the video. But before we get into the video, like I said, because I do recognize this is a loaded topic here that I'm very happy to address. Ooh, okay. Yes, honey, yes. And I think it also will make the video much more engaging if you guys share your ideas. For those who are watching this video live, Basquiat, I'm a big fan of Basquiat. Yeah, like I want you guys to feel free to engage. I know, unfortunately, a lot of you guys who will be watching this video on YouTube, you miss out. And I have another package I want to open, but I'll get to that later. You guys miss out because you missed my live video on Facebook. Hi there, how are you? So feel free to share your thoughts, your opinions. Don't hold back, because I'm not going to hold back on this topic here. I receive a lot of messages from a variety of people, Black men, white men. Very few messages are received from women. It kind of comes in very sparingly. But I reposted this status update that I received in my memories notifications relating to a thought that I had. A thought that I had a couple years ago, and I still maintain this thought that there is a double standard. We know there's a double standard that exists when it comes to openly expressing one's sexual identity, right? Or sexuality, shall I say. And I said that men are encouraged to embrace and freely express their sexuality, whereas women are not. Now, if you guys disagree, feel free to share your thoughts below. And I'm going to get into why I believe that is true. There's much evidence to substantiate that belief. Now, granted, not all men, right? It's not all men, not all women. But we know an overwhelmingly amount of men, let's say, and women fall into this. And women, when women begin to step into their sexual identity, their sexual expression of their sexual identity, what happens, right? Women are shunned, they're berated, they're judged. You know, they are shamed. There's a thing called slut shaming that happens with women. And I find it to be ironic given that for men who are heterosexual, like, you are reinforced for your sexual expression, right? You're given props, you're given kudos when men have sex. When men have sex and they indulge in sex, right? Whereas with women, it's a bad thing. So we have a lot to talk about here because I think this topic is very dynamic. There are many intersections that we're going to cover here in this video, even as it relates to the interracial aspect of it. And when it comes to effectively channeling one's sexual energy, it all boils down to energy, right? And we understand it in the terms of sex, right? Given that we have these parts of our body that we call sexual organs, such as our vagina, such as our penis, such as our breasts, right? These are reproductive organs. And the energy that we feel that comes through those organs, I think, is intersected with other energies. And this is the reason why when white men specifically inbox me, right, they send me messages on Facebook and they email me asking me, hey, can you talk about, Black New World Order? Can you talk about cuckolding? Because these are things that they're interested in, like these are their fantasies. And I take caution and I ask them, listen, it's important for you to self-reflect to see, where is this energy coming from, right? Where is this attraction coming from? And they oftentimes point towards porn and say, well, I've been watching porn, and so that influences me to want to explore this, right? And of course, I think porn can be a factor, an influencing factor, but that's not the source, right? The source comes from within you. That's something that you have, right? Whatever is boiling, whatever that has been brewed, that has been shaped within a person, they're going to manifest that, right? And you're going to attract what it is that you have an itch for. Yes, you come across porn and that helps to reinforce that fantasy. It helps to scratch that itch that you have, but that itch comes from something deep within. So going back to this whole double standard, I think it's unfair because for men, it's like these are heterosexual men who want women to help them fulfill their sexual needs, right? To help scratch their itches. Men, on one hand, are praised, right? They receive props and daps and, oh man, did you hit that, right? But then women, on the other hand, are made to feel shame. I think it has its purpose, right? It's a functional purpose to creating these stigmas, right? Attached to sexuality and women expressing their sexuality, because I think anything that is rare, that is held to be sacred, is obviously more attractive, right? For men, it's all about them receiving their pleasure. And how can they receive pleasure for something that they perceive to be something that is garbage, or that's something that is disposable, right? For women who are sexually promiscuous and engage in lots of sex, right? And engage in indiscriminate amounts of sex, that can be perceived to men, and men have been socialized, obviously, for them to develop this perception, this negative perception, that that's something nasty. That's something to look down upon. That's debauchery, right? So then they become repulsed towards women who are sexually promiscuous. But then they themselves are sexually promiscuous. So you see how that works? So here I'm going to unfold the healthy way of how we can channel our sexual energy so that it not only benefits the male gender species, but also the female, the feminine. Because we're one and the same, right? If men are allowed to enjoy their sexual energy, in the way they express it, women should also equally be allowed to enjoy it without feeling ashamed of it, right? Without having this stigma, without feeling bad, without having regrets. Because that's often what happens, what comes up for women. I follow this prominent former radio personality, but now she is this kind of social media sensation. She was based out in Chicago, Illinois, but she moved to Los Angeles recently. Her name is Kendra G. She hosts a daily dating show on her platform, on all of her social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, where she interviews guests, right? Anyone can join the show. You just click request to join and she'll bring you up. She asks you a series of questions related to your history and what you're looking for in a partner, right? And one of the questions she asks is, when was the last time you had sex? When was the last time were you intimate? And she asks men and women this. Now, I find it interesting the way people respond to questions, right? Their ease at which they respond. And then some are inhibited to responding to that particular question. And that's where I focus on, right? The inhibition. It's just like, why is there inhibition, right? Why is there a block? Why do people second guess themselves? Why do they pause when they're asked that question, right? Just notice if you watch that show, it's just like they have to take a pause and like, should I really answer that? Is that really anyone's business? And I'm thinking, in an ideal society, there should be no problem around that question. I mean, your truth is your truth and your reality is your reality. So why should you feel any negative kind of way when that question is posed? Why should there be negative emotions that come up, right? You notice, like, throughout the interview, the person could be having a good time, they're laughing, they're feeling safe in their skin, right? But then when that question comes up, the energy shifts, right? Why is there an energy shift? Because when they ask that question, when was the last time you were intimate, by Kendra, then they think about that last time. That last time usually is very recent, right? Within the last week, within the last month. And then a negative thought comes up in their mind, right? Why the negative thought? Now, maybe they had sex with a person that they don't like, that they learned that, okay, this person isn't for me. But even within that situation, I think that's very unfortunate, because for me, I look at sex as sacred. And so in uncovering the abstinence or the celibacy part of sexual energy, that's where I am right now. And I think the question often is posed is, how can people maintain an extended period of time of celibacy or abstinence from sex? And I'm thinking very easy, right? But it's easy for me to say because it's how I perceive and how I treat sex, right? It's all in your reverence for what sex is. And for some people, sex is, scratching an itch, right? It's like an addiction. It is a coping skill for them. It's how they manage and they get through life, right? So if they're stressed, they turn to sex. For a lot of men, that's what sex is for them. So the more stressed that a man is, the more sex, the more urges he has to have sex with a woman, right? And then you see those men having sex with many different women. Not only is it related to stress for men, but also related to insecurities. And you see that the more insecure a man is, the more he turns to sex. Not only sex, but sex with multiple women. In that, the more women you see this man with, the more insecure he is, right? The more insecurities he's struggling with. And sex for him is a way to massage those insecurities, to stroke his ego in a sense, right? That, if I can get 4 or 5 women to spread their legs wide, to cock their legs open and to have sex with me, then I must be somebody, right? Because they deem themselves to be inferior. They have internalized these negative perspectives of their own identity as a black man in this racially oppressive society that we call America. So that is another means to an end, right? For them, sex is a way to boost their ego, to stroke their ego. For others, like I said, it's a coping skill to deal with stress, right? Stress from their day-to-day job, just stress in general, right? And just being an adult, having to pay bills, not having enough money, but the cost of living is steadily increasing. So that's what sex is for them. For me, however, sex is sacred. I don't turn to sex to cope. I think that people who are very spiritual, who are very responsible with themselves, with their sexual energies, they are very attuned, number one. They're very attuned to themselves, to the world around them, and they know that sex is a sacred, special thing. It's something that you protect, right? It's like this undiscovered treasure, in a sense, that you really want to hold sacred and near to your heart. And so in something like that, it's not something you broadcast, or it's not something that you seek to engage in with any random person indiscriminately. That's not what sex is. If you look at sex in that way, it's all about your perspective, because what follows from your ideas and your perspectives, your attitudes, is your behavior, right? And your emotions are attached to that. So it's actually been over a couple years actually, since I've had sex. It's actually going on 3 years. January 2024 will make 3 years that I have been in this period of sexual abstinence and celibacy. I've done this. So this is something that I do periodically from time to time. Like, I'll go on these long streaks of just not having sex. Not to say I don't date. I do go out on dates with guys, right? And I may even kiss a guy, right? I may even be found in the same bed as a guy, but it doesn't mean that we are having intercourse. We are having penetrable sex. Because for me, it's about the mental connection, right? And it's about seeing that person's mindset. Where does this guy stand mentally, spiritually, politically? And for me, my sexual attraction to a man is contingent upon those things. I lose attraction towards a man if I see that he does not have love for himself. He does not embrace his African identity, for example, right? Or he has a warped view, distorted perception of himself, of the black woman, right? He has embodied these negative connotations of who a black woman is. Even though out of his mouth he may say, "Oh, hi, black queen," but then you begin to peel back the layers and see that, oh, he really holds these whitewashed, internalized, negative views of black women. Because he begins to reference people like Kevin Samuels, right? Or begins to speak of like the red pill ideologies, which I'm completely repulsed at. So how can I lie down and have sex with someone when that comes up? As it relates to the other topics of Black New World Order, and interracial dating, and cuckolding, which has an interracial component to it, like I said before, I am open to talking about a variety of topics. That's just what I do. I'm a vlogger. I like to engage in stimulating conversations. However, I think my view is very different than what it appears to be on the surface, right? You guys will come across my video and you'll see, my video is entitled What It Is, and you automatically assume, right? I think this is the reason why a lot of white men initially on the surface are drawn to me because they're like, oh, right, perfect bedwench, so to speak. But then if you really pay close attention, you will see that I am not. In fact, I have no sexual interest, I would say, in white men. It's just not my type. And as it pertains to Black New World Order, I've talked about this before. White men have come to me and it's like, oh, what is your take on Black New World Order? I think it's a great idea. It's a way for Black people to harvest this power that has been taken away from them. And I'm like, y'all are so sick, people. Y'all are really sick. And for the Black people who fall for that bullshit and thinking that you can harvest this power back from white people by having sex with them, that's a whole nother level of racial programming. It's like what's happening in Hollywood, right? For the Black celebrities and thinking that wearing designer clothing is a way to regain a sense of power, purpose, and identity by wearing the labels of white designers who are attached to your own oppressors. This is the reason why having political consciousness is very important to me, because there's no way my pussy is going to get wet in that sphere of thinking. It just doesn't, you know? Now, I have to take a pause right here to emphasize and to be clear to say that for me, yes, I am a very sexual being. It goes without saying. I am sex positive. My page is sex positive. So I'm all about embracing it. And I think that's the reason why obviously you guys also are attracted to this page, this channel, because I talk about sex so openly and freely and unapologetically. So I think within the right circumstances, the cards are laid right with the right person or people, it can be a very magical thing. Oh my gosh. Imagine that. We're going to talk about that in a minute, right? Given that everything is in the proper place. But oftentimes it's not. And when you guys come from those angles of the Black New World Order, the interracial cuckolding, I'm just like, stop it, okay? You know, like, everyone is entitled to their own fetish. But I've said this before in previous videos. What I have an issue with is when you guys use our oppression, right? And you use our racial trauma to get your sexual needs met. Like you're taking advantage of another group of people's race trauma and the lingering effects of that to capitalize upon that for selfish gain, right? So you can get your sexual needs met. Like I'm opposed to that. Like if you want to get fucked over and bent over, I've said this before, by a Black man as a white man, then just say that, right? Don't try to say, oh, well, this is how you can gain power. That's, I think, a bit, that's very offensive. And it sounds like a person who is a predator, right? That's like predatory behavior, I think, of people, because they twist the truth, right, to serve them. When it's really unnecessary. You don't have to do that. Or do you? Is that the way? Is that the only way for you to get BBC, a big black cock in your ass? In your tiny butthole? That's what you want, your asshole stretched out by a big black cock, and that's your way, that's your means of doing so? By further infiltrating this person's mind with propaganda, with your own spin of what the truth is. And then I just think, it's even more disgusting for Black men to fall for it, right? And I don't think this is a majority. I think this is a very niche population that is drawn to this particular fetish. that has been popularized on these porn sites with these hashtags BNWO or, the cuckolding and all of this. It's just like, for people to actually believe that this is a real thing. I mean, I told people before in a previous video, let's leave it where it is. It's in the realm of pornography, which we know is a different type of reality. I won't take that seriously, right? But that's just like filmmaking. Hollywood, that's a different type of reality. You can't take it at face value. But when you guys continue to try to push the narrative, that's when I take issue with that. That's when it becomes problematic. To each his own. For some people, when it comes to channeling sexual energy or using sexual energy to channel other energies that a person may be dealing with, right? Like, say, for trauma, a lot of people in general, irrespective of race, we carry forms of trauma. White people have their trauma, black people have their trauma. And then crossing planes with each other, there's ways that we reenact that trauma. And through the reenactment, people find solace, right? They find a sense of healing. They find a sense of relief being able to reenact that trauma, right? And crossing paths with other people who also have trauma. One may say this is a form of trauma bonding, for example. And it makes them feel good, right? That's their way of coping with it. We know that racism is a constant in our society. Racial oppression is a constant in our society. And for white people, black people, they take to a different dimension within the sexual realm to be able to express these energies in a healthy way in which they have control over. So I get it. I understand the transfer of energy wholeheartedly. I talk about my own way of kind of subverting or sublimating my childhood trauma in a healthy way in which I have control over it, right? And having to endure childhood beatings and physical abuse at the hands of my mother. But then as an adult, looking back retrospectively and taking that and developing an affinity in which I have full control over towards bondage, beatings, and spankings, right? By men who I'm in a mutual agreement with, in a consensual, mutual relationship with, that I have co-created, not a victim, right? So I understand it. And I think this is also the reason why, like I said, you guys come to me, because I meet you guys where you are. And we can have those difficult conversations. But the only way we can have those conversations and keep it 100 is if you guys are 100 and honest and talk about what's driving that. Because I can talk about what's driving mine. I can talk about what's driving my affinity to being stripped, unclothed, right? And tied up in bondage, and allowing a man to beat me, right? To whip me, right? And then I receive pleasure from it in all sense of the word, right? Not just sexual pleasure. I mean, just even a thought of it, right? Even a man, before it even materializes in the physical realm, like just having a conversation and imagining this, it makes me moist. I can be very frank. I get freaking wet just thinking about it, right? So just imagine when it happens and that safe space has been created, has been nurtured over a period of time, and this unfolds. You already know. It's a waterfall. Like, you already know. So I get it. I definitely get it. I just think that I think it's best for people to just be honest about it. That's what I'm seeking. Like, let's have the real conversation of the psychology behind what drives these sexual fetishes that you guys are drawn to, which I talked about in my title, right? Which are clearly indicated there. Let's just talk about the psychological underpinnings of this, and also talk about the sexual expression as it manifests itself in that realm. It's channeling the energies. It's channeling your own childhood traumas as a white boy. As a disempowered white little boy. And your way, for some white men watching, is your way of getting back at your own parents that you hate. Not having commitment and fidelity to your own race as a result. And then taking to black men as a way of finding your peace. As a way of finding your solace and consoling the little boy that never got the true love that you wanted to receive. So what better place to get it from than a black man? Oftentimes people step outside of their race because of the hurt that they have endured within their own race. But we don't want to talk about that, though. Right? We don't want to go into talking about that. I think that's very important. That's part of the healing process. You can still do both. Doesn't mean that, okay, you have to forfeit and give up these interracial alternative sexual relationships, right? But through that process of you experimenting, because that's essentially what you're doing, you don't really quite know. But I think it's much better, and it's so fulfilling when you come to that level of consciousness, of self-awareness, and acceptance of what's driving your behavior, what's driving your inclinations, right? To witness your white wife be drilled by a black man because you are vicariously living through her. And that's essentially what you want to experience, right? You would like to be drilled, your asshole to be drilled out by a black man. But then you sacrifice your wife. She's a sacrificial lamb, and as an experiment to see how it goes, right? And if you can trust your wife, and I think that just feeds into, that's kind of a whole nother layer of what I was saying in the beginning of this video, when I was talking about the double standard and how men are afforded so many, like all these luxuries that men are afforded at the expense of the feminine, you know? It's like, where is the respect, right? But looking at that scenario, how even white men sacrifice their women. They don't respect their women, right? And then for the women who mutually agree to this, okay, that's their choice, right? To live out their fantasy of having these options and allowing them to put their husband on the back burner so they can have their sexual needs fulfilled, right? But then the real thing is, what does that evolve into? And let's not ignore our true emotions, because we know what we feel is a reflection of truth. Like, often we suppress our emotions oftentimes, right? And I'm thinking about a conversation that I had with one of my viewers, right, from the UK, the solicitor, the attorney, who shared his story and his inhibitions and his fears concerning living out his sexual fantasy with his wife. Really, they weren't legally married, I don't think, but this was a woman that he had been with for several years. And And yes, in your mind's eye, always in our mind's eye, which could be a good thing, right? We imagine a good scenario playing out. We don't see all the possible loopholes, the negative possible things that could happen, that could ensue from our own decisions that we've made. We don't see these things popping up, but they're there. We don't see the potential red flags that could happen, but they pop up. They're there. And like I said, it could be a good thing because we're so driven by actualizing this fantasy that we have in our mind's eye. Everything else is non-existent, right? All the potential red flags, our negative emotions that may come up, these are warning signals, right? We repress those, they get suppressed. We block them out. And we're like, you know what? I'm going to do this. And some of us, we're so desperate to enact these fantasies that we do it very quickly, impulsively, without even thinking. And then, of course, there are consequences. In a perfect, ideal world where all the stars are aligned, your fantasy actually could go very well. Everything could it can be bliss, right? And it's like your first high, the first time you've ever tried any substance. You experienced that, and everything went so smoothly, just ecstasy. And then, of course, you want to try it again. Then you go for it again. But it's never quite the same as the first time. It never will be quite the same, right? Because this is a neurobiological aspect of these living out these sexual fantasies, right? It's more than just an idea and a physical act, but this is something that impacts one's neurobiology, your brain, your DNA. Everything changes. So this is the reason why it's important for you to make a conscious decision to fully understand what you are getting yourself into. Because if you don't, then you will have to deal with these unforeseen consequences. You will never be the same. You will forever be changed. And so will your partner or anybody else who is involved in that situation. Some people, I think as just people in general, we are on a quest just to experience new things, right? Create novel experiences. And that can be a healthy sign of just normal human development, right? Just always seeking out new experiences, right? When you stop seeking out new experiences, that can be a problem. But, I think it's part of what drives us as human beings. And it's been raining all day here in New York, yo. All day, and I'm scheduled to go out today. I'm still going to go out either way because I definitely want to go out. I need to go out to Brooklyn, but I have to take my umbrella. It's been raining all day. I'm probably going to be raining all week, and we're facing a heat wave coming soon. But yeah, I gotta be mindful as a fact because I have to leave in a little bit. But we can definitely continue this conversation. And like I said, I welcome you guys to message me directly via my email address if there are topics you want me to expound upon or address. But some of you have. And I haven't responded to your email, unfortunately, for various reasons. So I do pick and choose which emails I want to address. What time is it? Okay, yeah, it's almost that time. So I said that I was going to revisit the idea of when things are aligned, right? And everything is panning out how it should be, given the right circumstances with the right person. how experiencing or expressing one's sexual energy, channeling that energy in a healthy way could be magical. Oh my gosh, just imagine, right? But I think it takes certain things being aligned. There are certain things that must be set in place. Number one, I think it starts obviously with the mindset, and there are a lot of immature people that exist. There are a lot of people, not only are they immature, but people who have distorted ways of seeing things, seeing people. There are men who have swallowed the red pill, who have negative perspectives and attitudes towards women. That's a no-go for me. No way. No way I'm going to be in the same space with a person like that. And sometimes they wear these facades, they wear these masks, so they slip through the cracks initially, right? They may end up on a date, may end up, making your way to a date, right, where we're sitting across from each other at a table eating food. But that could be the extent of it, because as I begin to peel back the layers and I begin to see you for who you really are, then it begins to make clear sense to me that I should not be sharing any kind of energy with you at all. And I've experienced that recently. So there are those types. There are men who don't appreciate it, or don't appreciate it, right? It being that sexual energy exchange, and just don't appreciate a woman, right? So they are not deserving of that experience. It's like men, not just men, but I'm saying men because I'm a woman, right? And that's who obviously I interact with. But, men for the most part have to be reconditioned. Their minds have to be reconditioned for them to be able to engage in any kind of healthy channeling of their own energy with a woman. Because a lot of women are waking up to this and they're shutting men down, making it more difficult for men to express their sexual energy, even though men are reinforced for doing so, right, by their male counterparts. It's just like women are having that. And so while you may get it the first time, it's not going to happen again repeatedly, right? Or you're not going to be able to experience the full breadth of that the sexual experience that you could, right? There are levels to it. There's a reason why we release certain chemicals in our brain, these hormones throughout our body when we are sexually aroused. There's a reason for that. Sex is electrical. Not only is it spiritual, but it's very electrical. There's something happening on a metaphysical level, on a spiritual level, that goes through our bodies and obviously is connected with the universe, that happens, and it can be very therapeutic, right? It can be very life-changing. It can be DNA altering, given the things are laid as they should be and things are aligned. This is where it starts with the mind, and it starts with a healthy perspective coming from both the man and the woman, and anyone who is involved in that situation. I've always envisioned myself in a space and time where I could be just sexually free. And not just talking about it, obviously. Talking is one aspect, but actually being able to experience this and live it out. And I have, but very rare though, right? Like, if you guys had a chance to read an excerpt from my book, Dying to Submit, that's posted on my website at danielleleash.com, I share an experience I had with a master, a BDSM master back in Atlanta, Georgia. And this was back 2014, where that space was created for me to be able to express myself in that way. And no, we did not have penetrable sex. Oftentimes, that's the best type of sexual energy exchange, when there is no penetration. Granted, penetration definitely could be the icing on the cake. But yeah, it was just like things were aligned. And, you know, in the context of a solidified, long-term, serious relationship, yes, that could happen as well. I mean, it has happened in my last serious relationship where I was able to go there, right, and reach those heights of sexual ecstasy and full sexual expression with my partner. But only in that context, though, right? I find it very annoying to come across men who assume that this is just something that should happen sporadically, spontaneously, on a casual level. Like, I'm on a dating site and I come across men who just think that I'm here for a hookup, right? I'm just like, no, to each his own, but definitely not me, and you're not deserving. I have to know that a man is deserving and is very respectable towards me, respectful towards me. He's a respectable man himself. Because you can show me respect. You can show a woman respect, but if you don't respect yourself, you can't. How can you respect me? You have to be respectable. You have to have self-love, self-appreciation for who you are as an African descendant, right? As an African man. For me to even feel anything about you, right? So I think that's where it becomes easy for me to maintain this extended period of abstinence, because I am not turned on by anything outside of those parameters. I can't be, right? I mean, I can, that's where the dumbing down comes, right? Anybody, I think, can be dumbed down from their level of consciousness to a point where there's just not even thinking, they're just kind of reacting, their body's just reacting. But I think even in that context, it's a no-go. Because this higher level thinking is so deeply ingrained in who I am on many different levels that my body just doesn't respond to that, let alone my mind, So it would be a beautiful thing, though, I think. And I think about it from time to time, like, I mean, physically I come across a lot of men who on the surface phenotypically are very attractive to me, right? Like, they meet that criteria, the dark skin, they're 6 foot tall or at least close to it, they take care of themselves seemingly, right? On a physical level. But then when they begin to open their mouths, it's just like, it ain't there. They don't have that substance. They're lacking in that department. And I'm not the one to teach them. I mean, you guys can learn from me if you choose to learn from me virtually here on this platform, but I'm not the one to teach a man. For me, that's not, I don't think, my place. And if it was, I wouldn't be attracted to a man like that anyway, that I'm having to teach, right? As if he's a little boy, having to raise him up to be this man, that I would be attracted to in that way. On that note, I am going to wrap this video up. You guys feel free to share your comments below. I did say I was going to open this package here. Now, I got this weekend too as well. I don't want to mess up my nails, but yeah, as a sapiosexual, for me, having conversation, that to me, I can be turned on from a guy just the conversation alone. And I know I get it, a lot of guys, it's not there. They can't have the extent of their conversation is, oh, hey, beautiful. We used to be so fun and popping these. But that is the extent of their conversation. I'm just like, not turned on. So check this out. I got 2 of these actually. So as a psychologist who works at a psychiatric hospital, I work with a group. Many of my patients have a history of trauma, extensive amounts of physical trauma, sexual trauma, neglect, abuse, psychological, all different forms of abuse and trauma. And so I thought this book would be very helpful. I've heard of it, I've read excerpts from it, but I never actually owned a physical copy. You guys can see this is The Body Keeps the Score, Brain, Mind, and Body, and the Healing of Trauma. It's a very prominent book written by an MD. So I got 2 copies, one for myself, and then I'm going to let one of my patients borrow this book. It's brand new. Wow, wowzers. So I did get 2 copies of it, and it actually was not that expensive. I got it from Amazon. Yeah, it wasn't that expensive. So definitely happy I'm gonna start reading this actually probably today, cover to cover. Very important book. For myself, I'm reading it for myself first and foremost, given that, of course, I have trauma. I think we all have trauma. And the thing about trauma is that it traps us. Trauma is tricky. It's like, it's a life-altering event that happens. Usually it's so unexpected. And then boom, we're trapped. And some trauma, of course, happens repeatedly. So we can't anticipate it, you know. Sometimes we bring about a self-fulfilling prophecy because we behave in ways that triggers the trauma and brings it on, you know. But yeah, it just keeps us trapped in this space and time developmentally, and we can't get unstuck from that. I mean, we can, obviously, with extensive amounts of therapy, but it takes time. And it's so unfortunate because it stalls our growth, it stalls our progress, things that we could be doing but we're not doing because of X, Y, and Z. And so that's really unfortunate. But on that note, I'm going to wrap this video up. Share your comments below. And I'll catch you guys and gals in the next one.